conducted a 5 months forensic investigation into Bitcoin's launch and made 3 discoveries. Hal Finney missed the Bitcoin launch, Satoshi was running 2 nodes when Hal joined, and the Bitcoin network halted 8 times in the first 170 blocks. And I made a website where I published all the findings. Here is the TLDR. Most people know Hal Finney from the famous running Bitcoin tweet, and because of his proximity to the Bitcoin launch, people automatically presume Hal was the second node to join the network. But I couldn't find any proof of this, so I got to work. First, I gathered all the events that led to Bitcoin's launch in Hal's tweet and converted them all to the same time zone. Cryptography mail list post made by Satoshi, the few replies Hal made to him, and private emails Hal exchanged with Satoshi between the launch of the white paper and a few days after Bitcoin's launch. All of these together reveal exactly when the interaction between Hal and Satoshi took place and the shockingly low interest everyone showed on the cryptography mailing list. Hal was the only person to receive Bitcoin positively aside from a few dismissive replies. However, the most important and reliable piece of evidence comes from a post Hal made on the SourceForge forum right after he ran Bitcoin for the first time and reported it did not work for him. This was 1 day after Bitcoin's launch. And attached to this message, there was a debug.log file from Hal's node, which is still downloadable today. Here we can see exactly what Hal node was doing when Hal ran Bitcoin for the first time. The node received the hashes of the first 49 Bitcoin blocks, and then it crashed. You see, back then when a fresh node would start up, you would find other peers via IRC and ask these peers for a list of Bitcoin blocks up until the most recent one. And only after you would have the list, then the node would start downloading the whole Bitcoin blockchain. But Hal's node didn't get to the downloading part, it only got the list. And since the last block in the list is 49, we can conclude this is how far Bitcoin has progressed up until that point. By the way, if you find any of this a bit hard to follow or you just want more context, remember the full breakdown is on the website. Every piece of evidence, assumption, and conclusion is presented in full detail and all the important information is highlighted in red. Now, let's get back to where we left off. Soon after Hal's post, Satoshi started modifying the Bitcoin client based on the feedback he was receiving from Hal in order to fix the bug. And after a lot of back and forth, Hal Finney finally got Bitcoin version 0.1.3 to work on the 11th of January and was the recipient of the first Bitcoin transaction, 10 Bitcoins from Satoshi Nakamoto in block 170. All of this is revealed in the private email conversations which Hal made public later on, but considering this is an investigation, I could not rely on a single source of information. So considering the time period I was analyzing, I had to turn to the famous Bitcoin talk post titled Bitcoin and Me, where Hal takes a look back at his career as a cryptographer and remembers using Bitcoin for the very first time. Equally important, Hal shared an actual screenshot of his Bitcoin wallet with Forbes in 2014. Both of these sources are consistent with the private email conversations and confirm that Hal mined block 78 and that he was the receiver of the 10 Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi. Except Hal also mentions that he suspects he may be the second node to join the Bitcoin network. While this is a very reasonable suspicion considering the low interest people showed at launch, when I gathered all the pieces of evidence, public and private, I had to conclude Hal was not the second node. Multiple sources show that Hal joined Bitcoin after it surpassed block 1, hence the block 49 in the debug.log file. And on top of that, the Bitcoin node would not mine blocks if other nodes were not present on the network, so one single node could not advance the network past block 0. And we can see this constraint was added in the source code by Satoshi. Remember, all the detailed explanations are present on the website, including why Satoshi may have added this in the source code, how it was implemented, and what were the consequences. The website also has an LLM-friendly version where all the images are transcribed to text, so you can copy-paste the parts you need help with into your favorite LLM. Even though the reasoning above is based on multiple sources, it is not an actual proof. It's a set of logical deductions with high probability of happening. So I re-examined the Satoshi source code and the debug.log file line by line this time, and oh boy, did it pay off. The first version of the Bitcoin nodes would connect to the Bitcoin IRC channel to find other peers and save in their debug files what they see here, the channel becoming a snapshot of the network. Here we can see there are 3 nodes present, Hal being one of them, and the other 2 were here before Hal. Each of the nodes is referenced by what looks like a randomly generated username. One node is connected via a ClearNet IP and is the operator of the channel, very likely Satoshi, and the other one is just an unknown node behind Tor. So, at best, Hal could have been the third node to join the Bitcoin network. So now my conclusion was not only backed by multiple independent sources, but also the debug file that Hal posted. Now that I had one discovery in the bag, I could have stopped, but I had this strong feeling that there just is more to the story and I had to dig deeper. And that is how I got to Dustin Trammell. Who is Dustin Trammell, you ask? Dustin is a Bitcoin VC and very well known in the Bitcoin community as a very early adapter. And in 2021, he made a few tweets claiming he may be the second node to join the Bitcoin network and may have even beaten Hal. He even had private email conversations with Satoshi around the Bitcoin launch, just like Hal, and was kind enough to make these conversations public. So I went through all the private emails and verified the cryptographic proofs he provided, showing indeed he was an early participant. But the earliest I could place Dustin was block 309, which is obviously later than block 49, which we saw in Hal's debug file, or even block 78, which we know Hal mined. So even though Dustin was most definitely an early Bitcoin adapter, in fact, I am more than certain he was one of the very first people to ever use Bitcoin, he still joined Bitcoin after Hal. So the only other contender for the second node to join the Bitcoin network was one of the nodes from Hal's debug file. Since one of the nodes was Satoshi, the big question was, how can I find out who was the second node behind Tor? The problem was there was no more publicly available data that I could trust from that time. But then I realized this data was always available and was in front of me the whole time. This data was the Bitcoin blockchain. Straight away I noticed in the first 170 blocks there were 8 instances where the time between blocks was unusually big. Since the Bitcoin starting difficulty was very low, even a normal computer from 2009 could have found a block in 8 hours, let alone 24. So considering the low interest that was shown at launch, it looked like the Bitcoin network halted during these periods for that specific amount of time. Then I remember how Sergio Damian Lerner came up with the Patoshi pattern. This is how he estimated that Satoshi mined between 700,000 and 1 million Bitcoins. You see, when Satoshi implemented Bitcoin mining, he made a small mistake with how the Bitcoin client handles the extra nonce. The nonce is the number in the Bitcoin block that the miner increments when he's mining, but quite often the miner will go through the full range of this number and not find the block. So the extra nonce is the additional number that gets incremented if the miner needs a fresh new range of nonces. And since the extra nonce gets published in the Coinbase of each block when claiming the mining reward, this number also gets stored in the blockchain. The extra nonce counter should reset when the block is found, but because of the bug Satoshi introduced, it only resets when the node is restarted. Additionally, it increments when other things happen under the hood. So the extra nonce effectively becomes a unique identifier and an uptime counter for the node, and it gets stamped in the blockchain forever. Remember, everything is explained in detail on the website, including how Satoshi introduced the bug, what is the Patoshi pattern, and how it relates to this investigation. Some people do point out the Patoshi pattern is probabilistic and that noise can affect the data, but remember, we are in the very first few days of Bitcoin existence and there was very low interest shown at launch. Plus, we know for a fact that block 49 there were only 2 nodes present beside Hal. Hard to imagine others rushed in all of a sudden, so the heuristic becomes very reliable for this investigation as there's almost no noise in this analysis. But the most interesting part is that in the first 170 blocks, every time the extra nonce counter resets, we also get a big time gap between blocks, which most probably means that there is one single entity mining all the blocks, and when it turns off its computer, there is no one else to produce other blocks. This adds an additional certainty to the fact that the network actually did halt during these periods of times, so we can only conclude that the 2 nodes from Hal's debug file are run by the same entity, Satoshi Nakamoto. And in one of the emails, Satoshi mentions he cannot accept incoming connections for a short period. Tor nodes cannot accept incoming connections. All of this shows us how fragile Bitcoin start really was, and how if it wasn't for Hal and Dustin, Bitcoin could have disappeared and be forgotten forever. And yes, I know in this video I glossed over the details, but I just wanted to keep the video as short as possible and just present the main discoveries. As I mentioned in the video, if you want the full story, go to firstbitcoinminer.com and there you will find all the details. And this is as close as you can get to experiencing the burst of Bitcoin firsthand. But the thing that surprised me the most in this investigation that I didn't really mention in the video, but it is present on the website, it is how poorly Bitcoin was perceived on the cryptography mailing list. I mean, here there were all these cryptographers waiting for the next breakthrough in cryptography, and out of nowhere, Satoshi drops the invention of the century and everyone ignores it. But for some strange reason, Hal and Dustin looked at this very weird project that promised so much without any trace of cynicism and just judged it for what it was. And with a simple and honest gesture, they changed the world. And for me, gentlemen, I just want to say a very heartfelt thank you. It's crazy how a piece of software released on the internet by an anonymous person that did not even work the first time ended up altering the course of humanity. I mean, the last US election was running on a Bitcoin strategy, multiple countries have it as a reserve currency, all the big companies are fighting to get their hands on it, and currently it's worth 1.4 trillion and it spawned up multiple billion-dollar industries and is without a doubt one of the most scrutinized pieces of open source software. And even so, with all the attention that it's getting, turns out not a single person really took a close look at how this thing really started. Hal's debug file was available for 16 years, the emails for 10, and the extra-announced data was always present in the blockchain. And even when Dustin mentioned he may be the first person to use Bitcoin, only 100 people took interest in his tweet. So I suppose the big lesson here is that if you really care about something, go and do the search yourself. You may end up being the only person who cares about it so much. And of course, next time you encounter a strange new idea that makes a lot of promises, try to be like Hal and Dustin. You may end up changing the world yourself. And I really hope this investigation really puts to rest all the theories that Bitcoin was started by a three-letter agency, by aliens, by AI, aliens with AI, or even a group of people. It looks a lot like a single person that wrote some code, put it on the internet, and made all the chaotic mistakes that comes with this. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider making a donation. Producing videos like this is incredibly costly and it takes a lot of time. The video and the website took 10 months to finish. Also, I think I should clarify that everything you see on the website and in the video was done 100% by me with my own two hands. Anyway, if you like this video, I think you should subscribe because next month I'm going to release a short movie about Bitcoin Core that's already filmed. And it's going to be very similar to the style of this one, just slightly more narrative. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and of course, grazie alla Dio. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. If you're a Bitcoin company, or any company for that matter, that would be interested in getting featured in the short movie that I just mentioned, please do contact me for a sponsorship deal. You will be shown in the beginning of the movie, in the middle in a diegetic setting, and of course, at the end in the credits. Thank you once again for watching.